I stood frozen, the words drifting from the kitchen, hitting me harder than the grocery bag cutting into my wrist. I hadn't even stepped fully inside, just slipped through the side door the way I always did, quietly, trying not to disrupt anything. I thought I was being considerate. "Just dump all 9 kids on her," Logan said, his tone light, joking, as if it were perfectly reasonable. Emily let out a soft laugh, the kind people use when they agree completely, but want to pretend they don't. "She already paid for the food," Emily added. "The least she can do is keep the kids upstairs." I blinked, feeling the crumple of the receipt in my hand. I realized I was squeezing it so tightly that the paper had creased around the numbers 1,963.75. They didn't know I'd covered the cost. I didn't tell them. I wanted Christmas to be easy this year. I'd imagined gratitude, maybe even relief. Instead, I heard my son continue. "She'll do it. She always does." Their voices blurred after that. I stepped backward, careful not to let the floorboards creak. I slipped back out the same door, keys untouched in my coat pocket. My car was icy inside. I sat there for a moment before turning the engine over. Not because I was unsure of where to go, but because, suddenly, I wasn't sure of where I mattered. Logan wasn't cruel, not on the surface. He still called weekly, still hugged me when he saw me. But somewhere along the road, I'd stopped being mom and had been quietly reassigned as the dependable fallback, the woman who never said no. When I finally drove away, I didn't send a message. Didn't leave a note. If they realized I'd come and gone, no one mentioned it. That night, I laid the receipt flat on my kitchen counter, smoothing its wrinkles like it was something fragile. For the first time in years, I forced myself to really look at what I'd been giving and what I'd ever truly received in return. Later, lying in bed with the lights off, their words looped in my head like a broken recording. "Just dump all 9 kids on her," over and over, a phrase I never asked to hear. My memory drifted to every moment I'd said yes without hesitation. When Emily had her minor surgery, I handled school pickups, dinner, even their laundry. When Maria, my daughter-in-law's sister, had her 3rd baby, I watched her older 2 for an entire weekend because no one else could manage them. No payment, no acknowledgement, just expectations dressed up as duty. Dylan, my younger son, moved to Oregon 6 years ago. He's gentler with what he asks of me, but he's far away. And Logan stayed nearby. Over time, nearby turned into available, and eventually available became responsible for everything. It happened slowly, first birthdays, then holidays, then childcare just until they got back. Except just until never ended. This Christmas, though, he'd promised rest. I remember it clearly. He'd said it right after Thanksgiving, standing in my kitchen picking at leftover cranberry sauce. "You've done enough, Mom. We'll take care of Christmas. Just show up and relax." And I believed him. The week after, I prepaid the catering bill. It was meant to be a gift, a quiet one. I didn't tell them. I just wanted to lighten the load. I imagined us all together, actually enjoying each other's company. That word "together" kept echoing in my mind. But that single careless sentence I overheard sliced straight through the illusion. I wasn't invited to rest. I was expected to bankroll the holiday, supervise the children, and then disappear upstairs so they could celebrate as a family. Around 3 a.m, I got out of bed and grabbed an old receipt to write on. I made 2 columns, given and received. By dawn, the left side was crammed, full years of hosting, errands, late nights, favors I never questioned. The right side, received, remained blank. I stared at it for a long time, wondering if I was overreacting. But as the minutes passed, more memories surfaced, ones I had buried under excuses. Last Thanksgiving, I'd cooked with them all day, cleaned afterward, and still ended up on the pull-out sofa in the basement while Logan's in-laws got the guest room. No sheets, no pillow, just a folded blanket. Emily had said, "Oh shoot, we meant to set you up better," and that was the end of it. Mother's Day came and went without a single message from either of my boys. Dylan texted the next day. Logan didn't at all. At their wedding, I ironed Logan's shirt, tied ribbons on centerpieces, helped clean up a spill yet in the official photos. I wasn't included. Not in a single posed shot. "You must have stepped out," Logan said later. I had stepped out, but only to scrub wine off the floor while everyone else smiled at the camera. This year was supposed to be different. I looked down again at my paper. Received was still an untouched column of nothing, so I drew a dash, a placeholder for all the things I kept hoping would appear. Then I turned the page and made a new list. What they assume versus what I actually want. On the left, I wrote every expectation. That I don't mind babysitting. That I don't need rest. That my time doesn't cost anything. That I'll pay because I can. On the right, for the first time, I wrote the truth. I want to be invited, not assigned. I want to enjoy, not manage. I want to sit at the table, not serve it. I want to be treated like a person, not a resource. I stared at that list until the sun fully rose. And then I remembered a note I'd jotted months earlier. Nadine, or Nain, as I called her, had asked if I'd come out to her ranch for Christmas. I'd written, "Can't. Family first." Reading it now, the words felt like a joke. Nadine had called on a Saturday. Right in the middle of the chaos, Maria had dropped off her kids again with no warning, and I'd been juggling snacks, spilled juice, and a meltdown over the wrong cartoon. Nadine had laughed gently on the phone and said, "Come spend Christmas in the desert, Irene. We'll drink wine by the fire and let the younger folks do the heavy lifting." I'd smiled, exhausted, and said I couldn't, that I was already committed. But now, with the morning sun creeping over my kitchen floor, I scrolled through my contacts until I found her name. I didn't call yet. I just hovered my thumb over the button, letting myself imagine, for the first time in years, a holiday where I wasn't carrying everything alone. The next morning, I finally picked up the phone, but not to call her. I dialed the catering company. The woman on the other end recognized me immediately. "Oh, Mrs. Marlowe, the Christmas order, was there an issue?" Her voice carried that polite caution companies use when they suspect something expensive is about to unravel. "I need to cancel everything," I said. She paused. I could hear her typing. "We can issue a partial refund. You'll receive about $1,040 after the non-refundable deposit." I thanked her and hung up before I could talk myself out of it. As soon as the call ended, something inside me loosened, like I'd been holding my breath for years without realizing it. Canceling the order felt like unclenching a hand that had been stuck in a fist for a decade. Afterward, I sat down at my table and wrote a single sentence on a piece of stationery. "No one else gets to decide your worth." I folded it, sealed it in an envelope, wrote my own address on the front, and put it in the outgoing mail. A letter from myself to myself, something solid, something I could hold when I needed reminding. That afternoon, my phone buzzed twice. Logan's name filled the screen. Then, an hour later, again. No voicemail, just calls. Persistent, urgent, like he already sensed a shift. I let each ring echo into silence. By evening, I pulled out a small carry-on suitcase, the one I used for weekends, not long trips. I placed it on the bed, feeling strangely calm. I packed slowly. Jeans, a cozy sweater, my old travel mug, the paperback I kept promising myself I'd finish. It felt like preparing for a life I'd forgotten I was allowed to have. I booked a motel room about halfway to Nadine's ranch, just past Las Cruces, for the night of the 23rd. As I clicked confirm, a wave of clarity washed over me. How many times had I made that drive for someone else? Birthdays, emergencies, chores, babysitting, helping, always helping, never once for myself. Zipping the suitcase shut startled me in the quiet of the room. It didn't sound like running away. It sounded like permission. That night, I slept deeply. No tossing, no waking, no whisper of guilt tugging at me, just rest. When morning came, I didn't check messages. Didn't open my calendar. Didn't rehearse excuses or brace for anyone's disappointment. I picked up the suitcase by its handle, walked to the door, and stepped into the cold open air. The highway stretched out in front of me, long and quiet, the kind of winter morning that makes everything look possible again. I drove without music, without talking, without explanation. Somewhere past Deming, I powered off my phone entirely. Not silent mode, not tucked away, just off. I didn't want to know if Logan had called again or if Emily had sent one of her breezy, overly sweet texts. I didn't want to decode anyone's tone. For once, I wanted peace, real peace. For miles, I thought of nothing at all. But as the scenery flattened into wide, dusty stretches, a memory surfaced Logan at 8 years old, carrying a chipped mug of lukewarm tea to my bedside on a Sunday morning. He'd whispered, "Be careful, it's hot," even though it wasn't, and I'd pulled him under the blanket, letting him drift back to sleep against my side. I remembered the weight of him, the warmth of him. That little boy felt so far away. Somewhere along the line, warmth became expectation. Asking became assuming. Love became obligation. And I still loved him. That wasn't the question. But I was finally learning that love doesn't mean becoming everyone's emergency backup plan. By the time I reached New Mexico, the sky was a soft gold. 4 more hours to go. Nadine had sent directions the night before, but after years of visiting her, I barely needed them. I didn't need instructions. I just needed to arrive. We ended up on Nadine's porch that afternoon, the wooden planks warm beneath our feet as the sun settled low in the sky. She handed me a mug of coffee, strong and earthy, the way she always made it. No demands, no rush, no to-do list, waiting behind her smile. A few neighbors wandered over people I'd met over the years, but never really spent time with. Someone brought cinnamon rolls, still warm in a dish towel. Someone else carried a deck of cards. A little battery-powered radio played old songs from the windowsill behind us. It didn't feel like Christmas Eve in the traditional sense. No panic, no chaos, no elbows brushing past me in a crowded kitchen. It felt breathable. My phone buzzed on the small outdoor table. I didn't even have to look to know the name lighting up the screen. Logan. I let it buzz, and then I let it buzz again. Finally, after the 3rd ring, I picked up. His voice came in clipped, already sliding toward anger. "Where are you?" I took a slow sip of my coffee before answering. "Not at home. And not with you." Silence, not confusion, just disbelief. "I heard you," I continued, my voice even. "I was in the hallway when you told Emily to dump the kids on me. I listened to every word." He inhaled sharply, probably gearing up for an excuse, but I didn't give him space. "You didn't ask me. You didn't include me. You didn't plan with me. You planned around me. And you only remembered I existed when you needed someone to pay for everything and take all the responsibility afterward." Another pause. Then, softer, almost nervous. "You're still coming, right? You're just upset." "No, Logan. I'm not coming." I waited a beat before adding, "I canceled the catering." I could hear him stiffen, almost hear the math in his mind scrambling. "The food, the gifts, everything," I said. "I never told you, but I paid for it all, and now I've taken it back." "Mom, this is dramatic." "No," I replied calmly. "This is honest." There's a difference. I could hear voices behind him. Emily's, maybe Maria's asking, "Is she on her way?" Their words sounded faint and distant, like background noise from a life I no longer belonged to. "No," I said, not to Logan, not to them, but to the idea that I'd keep playing a part I never agreed to. "I'm not." Then I ended the call, turned my phone off, placed it face down beside my cup. Nadine didn't ask what happened. She just slid another cinnamon roll toward me and nudged my shoulder with hers in quiet solidarity. And so we sat, letting the stillness and the soft desert wind wrap around us, like something hard-earned and finally deserved. Christmas morning arrived gently. No alarms, no frantic whispers from downstairs, no oven timer blaring at full volume. Just the sound of the floorboards settling and the soft simmer of broth from the kitchen. I padded in barefoot. Nadine was already at the stove, humming to herself as she stirred the pot. She handed me a spoon without instructions, without asking for anything in return. I stirred while she chopped cabbage and lime. We moved around each other easily, like old friends who understood the language of quiet spaces. By mid-morning, neighbors began drifting in. Arms full blankets, bowls of food, jars of cider, plates wrapped in foil. Someone brought tamales. Someone else carried paper crowns. Someone set a small bouquet of eucalyptus on the table. It didn't feel like performing Christmas. It felt like living it. We set the long wooden table on the back porch, 12 chairs, all mismatched. Nadine pointed to the seat at the end. "That one's yours," she said. Not out of obligation, not because no one else wanted it, because it was given freely. People asked me simple things: where I was from, how I met Nadine. They laughed, shared stories about baking disasters and ornament catastrophes. No one asked me to chop, clean, supervise, or rescue. For the first time in years, I wasn't a role. I was just a person, just Irene, and it was enough. After lunch, someone pulled out a deck of cards. Others gathered around with folding chairs. The sun warmed the porch, and the breeze softened into something tender. I sat on the railing, sipping cider, feeling full not from food, but from something deeper, something steadier. And that's when the thought arrived, quiet and unmistakable. I don't have to return to the life I had before. It was the morning of the 29th, when everything shifted again. I was folding laundry slowly, deliberately, without rushing, letting the quiet of the house settle into my bones. The knock at the front door sliced through the calm, sharp, rapid, full of entitlement. Not a polite tap, not even hesitation. I knew exactly who it was before I opened it. Logan stood at the front, jaw locked tight. Emily hovered behind him, arms folded across her chest like a shield. And beside her was Maria, her expression pinched, eyes narrowed, already preparing whatever speech she'd rehearsed in the car. I didn't greet them. I simply stepped aside so they could come in. They marched inside without asking. Not one of them said hello. "You embarrassed us," Emily snapped first, as if she'd been holding the words on her tongue since Christmas morning. "No greeting?" I asked evenly. She ignored the question. "The food never showed up. People were confused. We had to explain everything." Maria jumped in. "Do you know how much we had to scramble? We went to 3 different stores. 3. You ruined Christmas." Logan crossed his arms. "You really did, Mom." They said it like it was a verdict, something final and indisputable. I leaned against the counter, calm in a way that startled even me. I let them speak. I let every complaint stack itself neatly in the air between us, like damp laundry waiting to be wrung out. When they finally paused, I answered quietly. I didn't ruin anything. I simply stepped out of a role I never agreed to play. Logan frowned. "What does that even mean?" "It means," I said clearly, "I am not your staff. I am not your free babysitter. I am not the invisible cook who fixes everything without being seen or thanked. I'm your mother, not your employee." Maria scoffed. "So you punish everyone because you were tired?" I met her eyes. "No, I chose not to be used. That's not punishment, that's protection." A silence settled over them, heavy, uncomfortable. Emily looked at me like she was waiting for me to break, to apologize, to return to the version of myself that made their lives easier. Logan looked confused, like the ground under him had shifted in a way he couldn't control. Maria kept shaking her head as though my boundaries were something absurd. I walked to the door and opened it. "If you came for an apology," I said softly, "you won't be getting one." They hesitated on the threshold, maybe expecting me to backpedal, maybe thinking guilt would kick in. But I didn't flinch. One by one, they stepped outside. I closed the door calmly, no slam, no drama, and locked it with a soft, decisive click. Then, I turned away from it and let the stillness settle back into the house. 2 months passed. The holidays slipped by without spectacle, without obligation, without noise. January drifted quietly, like steam rising from a kettle left on low heat. I didn't send out New Year's cards. No one sent one to me. Most Saturdays, I found myself walking to the public library. There's a reading nook by the southwest window that catches the warm afternoon light. I'd bring my thermos of coffee and whichever book I'd just picked from the new arrivals shelf. Sometimes I finished them, sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I just sat there and breathed. On Thursdays, I spent a few hours volunteering at the clinic down the street, checking in patients, handing out clipboards, offering kind words to strangers who expected nothing more from me. It was simple, gentle. It never felt heavy. I didn't block Logan's number. He called twice in January, both times after 11 p.m. No voicemail, just missed calls. I didn't call back, but I didn't delete him either. This wasn't punishment. I wasn't angry anymore. I just wasn't chasing anyone anymore. I think he's still waiting for the version of me who dropped everything at the slightest inconvenience, who absorbed stress like a sponge, who gave and gave and gave until there was nothing left. But she's gone. She's resting. These days, I cook only when I feel like it. I keep fresh flowers even if they wilt quickly. I say no when I mean no. I say yes only when it feels true. No one asks me to babysit anymore. No one sends last-minute demands. No one assumes my time belongs to them. The silence, the same silence that once felt like abandonment now feels like a room I finally have the key to. Sometimes I still reach for my phone out of habit, wondering if I've missed something important. But most of the time, I don't. Most of the time, I sink back into my chair, exhale slowly, and feel my life reshaping itself finally into something that belongs to me. Not borrowed, not expected. Mine.